biggest culture shock at the time was that there was no liquor in any stores besides the ABC store. I didn't know what the ABC store was. And when I found out that they only open like certain days of the week, or they only open like days of the week, and then sometimes on the, like, it's sporadic on the weekend, they have their own hours and stuff. I was very culture shocked because in California, all the Costco's and wholesale places, everywhere you can get booze. You can get alcohol anywhere. And here you can only get it from one place. I'm like, damn, except for beer and wine is everywhere. But that was a big culture shock. The biggest one that I remember was I was in a Mexican restaurant and I asked for a burrito. I was like, oh, this California burrito sounds pretty good. I haven't had one in a while. So the lady comes and gives me a fucking burrito with a bunch of shit on top of it, like sauce, fucking hot sauce, fucking cheese, and a whole bunch of shit. I'm like, I don't know, what do you want me to do with this? She's like, it's a burrito. And I was like, I didn't order this. She's like, yeah, you did. It's a burrito. And I was like, what's all the stuff on top? She's like, it comes with it. I'm like, I don't know if this is a joke or not. I don't know what's happening. She's like, well, you get that stuff on your burrito. If you didn't want it, you should have told me, like, to take it off. And I was like, I didn't know that this came with the fucking burrito. And no, I gotta tell you, it's probably something very stupid to get upset about. But I didn't know what was happening because a burrito, you eat it with your goddamn hands and not a fucking fork and a knife. And I told her this, and she looked at me like I was fucking crazy. And I'm like, I don't know how the fuck am I supposed to eat this? And she's like, that's why I give you a fork and a knife. I'm like, but you don't eat fucking burritos with a fork and a knife. That was, whew. That was actually pretty grueling. That was the biggest random thing for me. I didn't understand it. I didn't know what the fuck was happening. I thought she was playing a joke on me. But nah, she wasn't. Unfortunately, here they have burritos with like all the kind of shit on top. But I had some good times. I had some very good times. I remember one of my buddies was upset with his wife. He was upset with his wife, and he just called me up one day. He's like, "Hey man, are you at the barracks?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "All right, I'm gonna go pick you up. We're gonna go drinking." And I was like, "God damn!" Spent like $200 on shots, like pre-gaming for going out, and I was like, "Whew!" But that's where my alcohol tolerance came in. Shout out to my liver because that thing is holding on strong. It's holding on a string and a prayer because that thing is overworked. That thing needs overtime. You know what I'm saying? But it was fun. It was a fun night. I don't really remember much, but that was a pretty fun night. There's been times where I'm just drinking and then I don't know what the fuck happens, but that's usually what happens, right? It's usually what happens when you're at a good night out with your buddies. And yeah, after being a while there, I kind of already talked about in one of the other episodes, I kind of already talked about when my old commander was halting my career, like stopping my career because he didn't want me to leave the actual unit. And to be honest, I learned a lot that day. I learned that the Army, there's leaders in the Army that just shouldn't be there. And you learn more from those bad leaders than you would from the good ones, but you always got to take something out of it. But yeah, I don't want to talk too much because I will be just telling more random stories throughout the episodes, just throwing them in there. A lot more shit stories are coming though. I did, however, have a little question thing on my Instagram, Wet Boots Pod on Instagram, and I asked people to just ask me questions and I'll answer them on the pod. My good friend Nyasha Lopez asked me a question. What's the biggest lesson the Army taught you? Biggest lesson that the Army taught me was, that's a hard one. Because you hear all the time from people who are retired, you hear all the time, like, save your sick call slips, take care of your body. But I have the least consideration for my body, for my own well-being than anyone else. So I think the biggest lesson that the Army taught me was to shit outdoors, smoke a cigarette in the rain, and nobody is going to take care of you or your career more than yourself. So if you're waiting on your unit to let you take classes, fucking do it. Take it and just ask for forgiveness. Don't ask for permission. And that's the biggest thing that I know. My friend Monica _the Quaint Trail _Quaint Trail. Is the military more physically or mentally tough for soldiers currently? Man, that is a loaded question, because I don't know. Because I will say, new soldiers nowadays come in with a sense of entitlement. And if you're a new soldier, you know what? I don't know. But she does make a good argument here. I think it's mentally tough for soldiers, really, not more physically. Yes, there are a lot of fat people in the world and they can't really do a push-up or anything like that. And actually in my old unit, we had to kick somebody out because they couldn't do one push-up. I don't know how they passed basic training. I don't know how they passed airborne school and AIT and all this stuff, but there's people who just physically can't get there. But the physically part, the physical part is not hard because you can adapt. You can get there. The mental block is what's really in there now, because like I said, some soldiers come in with a sense of entitlement. They're like, I'm not going to clean the fucking bathrooms. I'm not going to fucking mow outside when everybody else is cutting grass, cleaning bathrooms, just eating the same shit that you fucking are. And just because you think you're coming in, just because you're from a certain place, you think that you don't got to do any of this shit. You don't got to fucking suck dick with the rest of us. Nah, man, you got to take that green weenie. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you just got to take the green weenie and just accept it. But yeah. Mentally probably. It's a lot of people aren't used to being away from home. They're very family oriented. And it could be grueling sometimes being away for that long. It can be grueling. My cousin, Jay Banuelos 24, asked me, what's your best drinking story with other soldiers? You know, best drinking story with other soldiers. There's been a lot of times where we've just gotten trashed in the barracks just for no reason. I do remember I had one of my buddies, shout out to Ruva, one of my buddies, we were drinking, we were just having like a good heart-to-heart late at night, and was drinking Wild Turkey rare breed, like 112, 116 proof. That thing will give you chest hairs. And I was sipping on it. We were talking for a good couple hours. And this dude wasn't touching it. Wasn't touching his drink. So I'm like, hey, man, you're making me feel alone right here. Poured your drink, you're not even drinking it. He's like, oh, my bad. Grabbed it. Now, granted, we were there for a couple hours. So it was about 3 fingers of whiskey. And he just grabbed the cup and just chugged it down. And I'm like, oh, my God, what are you doing? I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? And he's like, he would just keep talking. And then like 2 minutes later, he's like, hey, fool, I think I'm going to go to bed, fool. And I was like, all right, man, go ahead. There was another time where a couple of us went to Husk. Shout out to fucking Husk. And we were all carpool. We were on a van. And we did not see my buddy for a long time. We didn't see him the rest of the night. Turns out he calls somebody. He calls one of my buddies. He's like, yeah, I just kind of walked away. He's like, I was already drunk. I just kind of walked away and woke up in some woman's house. And I need you guys to pick me up. We're like, what the fuck happened to you? How the fuck does that happen? But yeah, he did that. And more recently, I was in Mexico. I was in Mexico training. More recently, I was in Mexico training, and there was nothing we couldn't drink in the little base. The base was very small, but very beautiful. And we were training, and we couldn't drink on the small post. So we went out to the corner store, grabbed a couple beers, and drank them in the parking lot like we were 16 again. It was fun, but we were like, fuck, we can't drink here. But we got a cab later that day, went into town, and found a nice little spot on the beach and started drinking. While we were drinking, my team leader at the time was like, you ready for the primer? And I was like, what's the primer? But I'm ready for it. As 2 shots and a beer to start off. And I was like, fuck. And so we drank like that all night. And this was like in the day and well into the night. So when we finally got back to the base, we were in like those Navy bunks. There was like 3-person too. There's like a 3-person story bed. And he's like, hey man, you got a paper bag? You got a bag or something? And I was like, I got a gallon Ziploc bag. He's like, yep. Takes it from me and just fucking throws up all in that fucking thing. And then he filled that thing up. He really filled that thing up. And I'm like, all right, so I threw it away. But that was pretty fun. A couple of years ago, Don't ask me how this happened. But a couple of years ago, I was hanging out with some pretty high ranking people. Don't know how, but we all ended up going drinking. It was like, I'm not going to say, you know what, allegedly. But we went to a birthday dinner and we were drinking wine and having fun. And then we went to a club and then another one. And then I was like, it was the last club of the night. It was like 1 or 2 in the morning. And I was like, all right, let's drink like me. Let's get it done. So we were just tossing back shots. I was handing out and tossing shots. And we were on the Uber back to the Airbnb. And it was so cold outside and it was so hot inside the Uber. I was sweating. I was dripping. Oh, it's disgusting. And I knew that we were really close. We were so close. And I'm like, I gotta throw up. I'm like, I gotta fucking throw up. And then so one of them looks back at me and I'm just like, my head is on the window. I feel so good. I'm like, oh, this feels like I just survive. And then somebody said my name. As soon as somebody said my name, I just shot up, put my hand over my mouth and just started throwing up. But it was all liquid because we didn't eat that day. So it was all alcohol. And I start throwing up and then like a little bit goes through my hands and I'm like, fuck, this is an Uber. They're going to charge us for this. I'm not throwing up in here. And this all came into like a millisecond. I'm like, I'm not gonna throw up all over the Uber. That's disrespectful, you piece of shit. So I swallow that throw up. I swallowed it. And then I was like, okay, cool. And then it just hit me. It dawned on me what I had done. And it was so gross that I threw up again. But this time it was like coming down my chin and going into my shirt. And by that time I swallowed what I could and I just left it on my shirt and it was just wet. There was no chunks. There was no color. It was just wet. So we got out of the Uber. As soon as we got out of the Uber, I just took 2 steps out and just puked my good, pretty little piece of shit heart out. It was disgusting. And I realized what I'd done. And I was like, I'm so ashamed of myself. Not because I did it in front of other people. I give a shit about that. But because I fucking swallowed my throw up. And it was rough. That was a rough night. But as soon as we got out of the car, everybody went into a different part of the house and just started throwing up everywhere. I was already good. So I didn't really care for that much. Too bad. But yeah, those are a couple drinking stories that I have. I'm sure there's more. I just can't remember them. Sometimes you just can't fucking remember what the fuck you're doing. My good buddy, coconut_goon, Josh Larson, we had him on the first episode. The dumbest reason a company got called on the weekend, preferably a story where someone fucked up. Now, this isn't one of those stories where somebody got a DUI and we had to come back. When I was working as a mechanic, we were told we had to spend the weekend there. Like the battalion was in the field and it wasn't fair to them that we get to go home. So we stayed in the motor pool. So as soon as we were going to go out, our chief tells us that, hey, the battalion's in the field. Got to go grab your shit. We're going to stay in the motor pool. So I leave, and then me and my buddy leave, and we pass by the company. We're like, this doesn't sound right. What the fuck's happening? So we stopped by the company, and one of our NCOs was leaving for the day. And he's like, what the fuck y'all doing? And then we're like, we're grabbing our stuff. For what? I'm like, because we got to go back to the motor pool. We got to stay there. He's like, why? Chief said so, because everybody's in the field. And he's like, ain't nobody in the fucking field. I'm like, oh, really? He's like, yeah, no, nobody's in the fucking field. You guys are just working. And I was like, fuck. So like we grab our stuff. 20 minutes later, we go back to the motor pool. And we start telling people, hey, I don't know why we're staying in the field, why we're staying in the motor pool. We don't know what the fuck's happening. Turns out this chief wanted to get ahead on maintenance stuff. I don't know. So he told us that we were going to stay in the motor pool, but our BC it went up to the BC in like a matter of like 30 minutes. And then after that, after we started working for a little bit, he's like, all right, go home. You guys can't stay here. And we're like, that's pretty cool. That's not too bad. Another question, last question, my good buddy, Jort Daddy, you know what I'm saying? Cause he got them quads, he got them cakes, baby. You know what I'm saying? This is a serious question. How does the individual handle mental health? That's a tough one, man. I will say that based on my own experience, mental health is really hard to juggle, really hard to figure out. And the best way that I've dealt with it personally, and it's not the right answer, is just drink. You don't want to do that. You want to find out what you're actually doing. You want to actually get something productive, but definitely get into therapy. I started doing therapy with my chaplain. She's a counselor and she can do that stuff like that. But definitely get into therapy, dude. Talk to somebody. Oh, the best advice that I got from that therapy was, I had a moment where I realized that I was truly by myself, that I couldn't really count on anybody, because it was like 3 a.m. where I needed to talk to somebody, and I grabbed my phone. I was like, it's 3 a.m. Like, nobody's gonna answer. You can call a couple times until somebody answers, but it's not 100%. And it's probably like a Friday or Saturday, and you don't want to ruin someone's night with your problems. That's just me. That's being rude as fuck. And I realized that I'm really alone, and I realized that I actually have to take care of myself and really listen and talk to myself. But the best advice for that is find 1 or 2 people that you can have that serious conversation about, like have that serious conversation with, and say, if I call you at an odd hour of the night, I need to know that you're able or willing to pick up the phone and talk to me, because I won't be in a good place. And that's why I'm calling, so I can call you. So that's why I'm calling, so I can talk to you. But that's the best advice that I can give. I personally would go to the gym to deal with my emotions, but got a little back injury that's not letting me do any of that stuff. So I bake. I make cakes, cupcakes, flan, cheesecake, do whatever I can to stay busy. And at the end of the day, I'm self-aware of what's happening, so I take some time to decompress and actually listen to myself. But self-awareness is key. That's the biggest key. You gotta realize, once you realize that your mental health is going downhill, to just talk to somebody. Come on the podcast and talk to me about it, dude. But that's gonna do it for me today. If you have any questions that you'd like me to answer, go ahead and DM me. If you want to come on the podcast, great. Slide into my DMs, and I'll get you scheduled so we can get you on, so we can tell you your story. Listen, you have a story to tell, and I want to hear that fucking story. All right. Thanks everybody for joining me today. Have fun. Have a safe weekend.